This should start YouTube, and I think that's all I have to do. Hopefully, you should see my, oh, I have to present, share. And hopefully this will come up. So how's everyone's capstones going? So, you know, since the past couple of weeks is coming along, okay? Oh, table. Oh, okay. Cool. All right, looks like we're live. And here are the slides. For some reason, there's a green square in the middle of the screen. I guess everybody can see that. Maybe we'll just have to roll with that. Okay, so this week, the topic that we're doing is system administration or DevOps or SRE, whatever you'd want to call this. Basically, what we're going to work on is how do you get some code that you have written, that you as part of your application, out into the world. Like, what do you do to actually get it to work for real? And everybody's going to have to do something like this as part of their capstones. And, you know, I think there's some flexibility about like what we actually cover today or this week, like how, you know, how many different things, because this is another thing like databases. It's a whole specialization. It's something where some people do this as their career full time. It's good to know about, and, you know, it'll be good to have some experience with it. But, you know, we're probably not going to, we're definitely not going to have time to go into all of the little things. And I think, you know, you've probably had about enough of like brand new stuff being thrown at you all the time. So I think we're going to do what is really needed for your capstones. We're going to do a couple of options of ways to do what your capstones need. And I think like today, as part of the class today, let's take a little bit of time and model through some capstones and what we're actually going to need in terms of infrastructure to support those capstones. Because this is largely stuff that runs on the internet, it runs on a server somewhere, and you connect to it, and you download your data, you save your data, you log in, you do these things which are involved connecting to something, and which I think everybody's capstone does include some kind of concept of a login, of a server thing. But this is also, some of these practices would also translate to if you're building a client-side app or the web and the front end of your website. You know, if you want to build and deploy that, there's going to be concepts that apply to that. But a lot of them that we talk about will be just for how to set up your server, how to, you know, how to maintain your server, how to connect it to a database, all in the real world, not on your laptops, but once you're running your capstones for real. So that's what we're going to do this week. Hey, the rectangle's gone. Cool. All right. So why are there three names there? What is it? What's the difference between system admin and DevOps and SRE? I'm going to probably, this might be you know, this might be wrong, or these are my opinions. So I'm just prefacing with that, you know, and this might be slightly controversial. I'm not sure. IT, system administrators. This is the oldest of the three names. This is the original kind of thing that companies had back in the 80s and 70s and 90s. You bought a big mainframe computer from IBM or whatever, and you run it. It goes in its own room. You connect to it, whatever, all kinds of old-fashioned computer stuff. And there are people who basically go and make sure that thing keeps working and perform maintenance, perform updates. They're who you call when your computer isn't working. You know, I can't log on to the portal. You call IT, right? This is what a lot of people these days still think of when they use the whole word IT. And I hear this from people all the time. Oh, I'm in IT. You know, well, kind of, but IT technically is a huge thing. And what a lot of people mean is the people you called at the help desk in the 80s. So this is like the oldest term. It's perceived as old-fashioned sometimes. It's perceived as like sort of second class. They're not real programmers. They're IT. Like they're just the people at the help desk. And you know, they get mad at you when you ask for help. You know, you're like, my computer's not working, and the IT people are like, well, you're doing it wrong. They're antisocial. This is a stereotype. This is how I understand the stereotype. So it might not even be an accurate stereotype, but that's all I'm telling you, is that that's the stereotype that I understand. The unfair simplification is that these are the sysadmins who use Perl to do their programming. So Perl is a programming language. It's sort of like shell scripting, shell, bash, shell. All the commands you write, you know, do things, and you can automate them into shell scripts. Well, if back in the day, for sysadmins, for old school sysadmins, if they're like, we need something better than shell, we need a programming language, a full-on scripting language that's more capable than shell, the stereotype would be Perl, because Perl is a great language. It's an old language. It's perceived as a sort of an older and clunkier scripting language, but it's a very powerful language. And that is something I saw on Twitter once, and it's kind of funny. So each one has its own language, by the way. DevOps. Okay, so DevOps is like what you hear maybe the most these days. I'm not sure. It's sort of what we use a lot. It's sort of a pretty decent, more modern term. It explicitly is about combining programming, which is the dev in DevOps, with the IT skills, with the operations, with the maintenance. And like what the idea is, like, you know, yes, all system administrators at a certain level do this, of course, but they're making it sort of explicit and part of the actual name of the thing, because it's really saying that the automation and the setup of these systems is just as important as programming some other part of the code base. And it's needed for safety, for deploying things safely, for not breaking your stuff, for your mental health, so that you don't have to go through all this tedious nonsense every time you want to ship some software. A lot of times, instead of saying like DevOps is like this department, this is the DevOps room and there's full of DevOps people, a lot of people will say DevOps is more like a culture. It's like something that everybody in the organization kind of participates in. Sometimes there will still be people who specialize in, but sometimes some organizations officially don't have actual full-on dedicated DevOps people, but the roles that they perform are shared amongst a lot of other teams. So it's much newer. It sort of has a little bit more kind of, it doesn't have nearly as negative of a connotation in my understanding. And it's sort of like a more modern version of the same thing, being explicit about programming, automation, doing this kind of stuff smartly. The unfair simplification of DevOps is these are sysadmins who use Ruby. So Ruby is another programming language. Yes, Anna.
So what does, like, I mean, in terms of when you get viruses,
You know, I think it really depends on the organization. I think, I don't know. I mean, I have a Mac, so I don't, like, there aren't a whole lot of viruses for Macs. And if I were to get a virus in my company, I would give it to the operations team. It's not called IT. It's not called sysadmins. It's like they do all company operations. They do, you know, the facility, they rent the facilities that we work in and the desks and everything. They manage out all of that. So like it really would be operations in the sense of ops, but it's not part of, I mean, it's and you know, I work at a small company, so it could go to anyone, or I could get stuck with it myself because someone's busy. But I'm not, you know, at a bigger company, often they would have a help desk. They would have what's called an IT help desk. And it would be or whatever help desk, and it would be the first line of who you call. And that's like, you know, it's not really DevOps. It's not really system administration either, though. It's sort of like, it's it's company operations is what it is. It really is core operations, because it's just like if you had a company car and it needed service, you would that's not like necessarily. DevOps is more used more often when the programs and stuff you're working on are what you're using to do the business direct, to support the business directly or to sell to somebody. So if it's like, this is the website and this is how we interact with our customers, then when maintaining that kind of thing is part of like, this kind of area of programming. If it's like servicing tools and equipment that a person might use, that's usually different. And it wouldn't be DevOps. It would be often called IT, but it wouldn't really be system administration either, because it's sort of, it's a lot of different companies will call it different things, and it'll be in different departments. It's sort of just all over the place. I would probably say it's probably a good sign if a company has it more towards operations, because it's like they're saying that, like, it's more like a tool that you need to get your work done, rather than like, oh, everything that is lumped together as this is a computer, let's just toss it to the computer people. Like, I feel like I'd rather have the first kind of like be part of the culture than the second one, because the second one kind of tells you like, well, they don't really think about computers very much in general, So anyway, I hope that makes sense. Okay. So the third one is SRE, or Site Reliability Engineering. This is about the same age as DevOps. It's a newer term. It sort of started at Google. It has sort of an additional twist with like, it's sort of like DevOps or it's maintaining software, but it's very explicitly about the software having to be highly available and very busy and very, very scaled up, highly available. It's often, they've invented a lot of sophisticated techniques in this area for deploying, and they're, like a canary deployment, which is when you have a small portion of your traffic redirected to a brand new version, right? So you want to say, we want to use a brand new version. You leave everything in place, but you have one little sort of load balancer saying a little bit of the traffic goes to this brand new thing. And then you see how that goes for a little while, and then you add more incrementally until you have all your traffic going. Because then if it fails, you only lose like a tiny bit of your traffic rather than the whole thing. Blue-green, it's a way of doing a similar thing where, each server is deployed in sequence, and once it's gone to green, then it can move on to the next one and continue the deployment. This culture, or this department, is often smart, rich, and sexy. I mean, more often to say, like, it's a very trendy word. It's like sort of like, saying like we are the coolest DevOps or IT operations, because, it's like we're working at Google basically, or we are dealing with problems that are just as hard as running google.com maybe. Anyway, the unfair simplification for this is these are sysadmins who use Go, which is another programming language developed at Google actually. So a lot of that is, again, tongue-in-cheek, my opinion, my understanding. Don't take it seriously, but that's sort of, high level what I understand by a lot of these terms. Okay, so DevOps is probably the still is probably the biggest and probably the best one. I think it's generally a good term. It has like, a lot of it has a lot of adoption, and it's sort of, I like that it sort of fundamentally is like the development of software plus operations together, because that is the concept. Also, it's a very catchy prefix, and it's been used in all kinds of other combinations. There's all kinds of other oxes out there now. I don't know if anybody actually says this stuff, but They do, okay.
Yes.
Okay, DevSecOps is DevOps with security in the middle there. So it's like, not only is development, but it's security. So I guess that's just to make it part of the word and make it equally as important. So great. WinOps is like DevOps, but you're using Microsoft Windows. Like, hey, they do it too. Cool. And then there is Slack Ops or Chat Ops, which is DevOps, but all of your processes, your automation processes can be routed through Slack. So like you can deploy something by going to a Slack bot and saying, hey, please deploy the software. And the bot will say, sure, I'll deploy the software. And then when it breaks, it posts in another channel saying like, hey, something's broken. So it's all integrated with the chat. And the idea there is that, people live in that kind of context all the time. And rather than having to switch context out of, I'm talking with the person asynchronously over a message here, but now I have to go check on the server, you can sort of make it easier on the people by having them talk to the server in the same way and have bots and things to do that. Have you used that kind of thing? Like
yeah, we got a couple Slack monitors that keep track of our build pipelines.
Okay, I mean, I guess we're probably doing a very similar kind of thing in a way because we have alerts, we have alert channels that get posted to automatically. There's integrations with stuff like Sentry, where Sentry just will catch exceptions for you and make a little issue right in Slack about it, and you can say, hey, I'll acknowledge this. And PagerDuty will do the same thing. I acknowledge this, or this one's resolved, or whatever, and you can take all those actions right inside Slack.
I have a favorite ops, and that's Hug Ops, which is what you say to an operations team when their entire server goes down.
Oh yeah, yeah. I saw that the other day. Let's add that. I saw that the other day because didn't Cloudflare, something exploded in Cloudflare? People were like, Hug Ops for Cloudflare. Hugs for when someone's server explodes. Yeah, that's a good one. I forgot about that.
I see a lot of Hug Ops when Slack goes down.
Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, okay, so those are all these other opses. It's a very catchy kind of suffix. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about just what are aspects of good DevOps. Again, my opinions. There's a lot of opinions out there, but I think I've talked to a lot of people who do it, and I've been to a DevOps conference actually. I have a T-shirt from it, and these are some of the things you hear, and a lot of them are really they're smart. So like one of the things that like DevOps kind of owns in terms of like when there's conversations, between different teams of like, what should be the priority? What do we need to do? Often like this kind of idea that like all the software is being developed by people. People have needs. They have to sleep enough. They have to have they have to eat healthily and live healthily and be mentally healthy and all of this. If that is not, if your organization doesn't support that kind of thing, your software will be bad. It will just start getting worse and worse because people will be stressed out. And it's not like, you can just stress people out to the max and they'll work as fast as possible. And you can just say, well, the mistakes are accountable right here. We can quantify them like this. And well, it's kind of worth it. You can't really quantify these kinds of mistakes nearly as easily. So, if somebody's like stressed out and they're like, well, I'm just going to, take a shortcut here and not do it properly, not put proper commenting or not put, the proper checks around this to make sure it doesn't break, or, not refactor something that should be built in a different way now that we have a new requirement. And I'm just going to skip ahead and ship it or whatever, because, the culture doesn't support saying like, we're going to push back, we're going to take more time. It's really hard to quantify how that kind of destroys the quality of what you're working on. But it absolutely does, because it's not, all of that stuff sort of sits there then forever, and then it's like a booby trap. It springs a year later when you try to go back and fix something. It's like, oh, well, you took a shortcut a year ago, and this is in a real bad state, and nobody's touched it for that long, so it's been working. But as soon as you want to go back and mess with it, you pay that. It's called technical debt. You pay back that debt for the shortcuts and the technical decisions you made earlier. So the culture and the practices are going to affect the quality of your code as much as just about anything else if you have a big enough team, if you're working on a project over a long time. Code reviews, actually mentoring people and being supportive of them, not having bullies or tyrants. Like a tyrant is like if someone's just like, oh, nobody ever disagrees with that person. They're, they always get the way that they, whenever there's an argument, they get the way that they want it. And the culture starts to support that. And then that's very bad, because the day that person makes a bad decision, nobody can do anything about it. Healthy work-life balance. If you are making people stay late to meet a deadline, they will become unhealthy, and you'll have a harder time meeting your deadline even when you push people, because when they're unhealthy, they're going to be not able to make the right decisions, or it'll take them longer to make the decisions. And if you push them, they're going to make bad decisions or take shortcuts, which come back to get you. Having, on-call shifts is sort of like, that's just really like if you are the person who gets the call when something is broken, if you're always that person, and things break often enough, that is very unhealthy too. So I'm probably too often that person, but our stuff doesn't break often enough for it to really be an issue. Plus we're hiring people, and we have 2 or 3 people, and we're about to set up our first on-call rotation. So that should be very good. Yeah. The second sort of thing in general area that I kind of think of myself is it's about building automation that the developers are going to use. So developers are automating things for other people, but when it comes time to deploy your own code, or to refactor your own code, or to do something that the developer does themselves, a lot of that stuff is tedious. A lot of it's tricky to do correctly if you do it manually. And rather than having to expect people to just do that and do nothing about that, automating that kind of stuff and making it those practices defined in code itself is going to help out a lot, just like it does with accounting or wherever else software is used. So this, make files. This is a kind of a file. Did anyone do like a thing on make files? Or maybe Ryan would have, or I don't know. So a make file is like a big bunch of rules for if you want to output this file, then run these shell commands, so bash commands. And if you want to output this file, then run these shell commands. And it's sort of been extended to be like, if you want to really do anything, run these shell commands. You can have what are called phony files, phony targets, which are like, this isn't really a file, but I want to do all these commands, and everyone just uses make file for that. Or, there's other ways to do it, but make files are run on absolutely every system, and they let you make nice little shortcuts to say, make production version or make whatever, instead of having to copy all the commands or run a separate shell script every time. So continuous integration, continuous delivery, that kind of thing, that's one of these, that should be much bigger font, because that's a huge sort of like, that's a huge technique that has more recently been used a lot, and is one of another hallmark of a very good development organization is if the builds, when they want to deploy software, do you have to do a bunch of things to deploy the software, or do you just commit it and merge the pull request? And what's called a continuous integration server just grabs that and says, this is the branch that's the production branch. It has a new commit. This is all in Git, it has a new commit. And because it's been committed to and the right processes are in place so you don't commit, code which is not ready unless to this branch, unless it's ready. This server will just say, oh, I'll take everything that comes in on this branch and build a brand new system and then deploy the brand new system all automatically. So you don't really even do anything except commit it. And sometimes you do a check, like a final check, and release what's called a hold to say, okay, it's good to go. It's all built and it's all set. But it's like end to end, it just builds itself. It takes a while to set up. I don't know if I would say you actually want to use a continuous integration server for your capstones. It's at the point where it's like, it starts to become beneficial when you work on something for a whole year maybe, or if you work on it with 5 people and you're all going to be committing to this thing daily. It's going to save you a ton of work to be able to have the system in place, which takes your code and ships it to production. It's the other benefit really is that you don't end up in a practice of like the second reason. So the first reason is you don't have to do a bunch of manual steps every time you want to ship code. The second reason is because that practice is in place and the code is shipping constantly, basically, you don't end up with a bunch of like, this is almost ready, like we're almost done with this feature, we just need to go through final checks and final deployment, and then that sits there for another week, and all of a sudden you've been working on something new in the meantime, and they're not compatible with each other or something like that. So by having it like kind of easy and very, very good process for deploying new code, you can make smaller changes more often. And that means that your stuff doesn't become so hard to manage and understand because you have so many changes which are waiting to be shipped.
So just to summarize what you just said, the first benefit is so that you don't have to do a bunch of manual steps before you ship code. And then the second, you said, is having a process for developing new code.
It's more like because you're shipping or pushing to production code more often, the differences between the code that's live or the code that's in production and anything you might be working on today that's new, that hasn't been shipped yet, are smaller. The actual differences that you are working on at any one time tend to get smaller. Okay. And then, automated testing. You've probably heard about testing. I think there's, I don't know if we're going to shuffle around some of the classes, but I think there's some upcoming class time on just testing and writing tests. But automated testing is basically saying, writing some code which says, let's run a scenario through your module. So you have a module, a function that's supposed to do something, a function that's supposed to multiply by 2, okay? You have a test that says, hey, I'm going to make a number, call it 6. I'm going to pass it to the multiply by 2 function. I'm going to get back the output of that, and I'm going to check that it's 12. And it's like pretty obvious. It's like, well, of course it's going to be 12 because your function multiplies by 2. But as you have more and more functions and they do more complicated things, if you're able to basically have little programs that do just those very basic things and guarantee that each piece does what it's supposed to do, then if you accidentally break that one of those functions later, one of those things you wrote a long time ago will say, well, says it came back with 11 or it came back with 18. That's not the right answer. Something has broken, and then that is often built into your continuous delivery or setup. So rather than having it automatically ship, it'll say, well, one of the tests here failed, so we're going to stop right here, and you have to go look at what's wrong. So that saves you fixing bugs which you ship to production, and then you see that, oh, a bunch of things are broken, and now you have to fix them real quick because the whole system is down or whatever. That's one of the hardest, that makes it a lot harder when it's like, well, we have to fix this now very quick and there's stress. Oh, try doing it under a lot of stress. It's not as easy. Anyway, so all, you know, and all of these sort of techniques are basically different ways you can automate things that developers would have to do on their own all the time, and which you're probably going to be doing on your own when you're working on your own kind of project, or when anybody's working on a small project. When I'm working on just a hobby thing, a lot of this support is not in place at all. And I can afford to not have it because, you know, I'm not under a lot of stress doing it. I don't have a deadline. I don't have colleagues who have to be able to trust the code I write, and vice versa. So, you know, it's not something that you just like always do this and never not do this. But when there's an actual organization and a project that where it's a good idea, it's a really, really good idea. Okay. So the third one is when you're writing code, when you're actually just developing your normal code. It's going to be an ongoing process for a long time. It's a marathon. It's not just you finish your project, your app, and then you never touch it again. I mean, sometimes, yes, but like anything that's active, anything that's actually successful, it pretty much is going to be worked on indefinitely. Other people are going to have to work on it if it's big enough. You know, if you work on a team, your colleagues will have to work on code you write. You're going to have to work on their code. You're going to have to work on your own code 6 months from now when you've forgotten all about what you wrote. And it's going to be just as confusing. I don't know if anybody has actually experienced this yet, but
This morning.
Cool. I experience this weekly, if not more than weekly. Yeah. It's very interesting to look at some code and be like, what in the world does this do? And who wrote it? And then you go look at the commit log and it was you. And it was not even a year ago. It was like 6 or 7 months ago, and you've completely forgotten about it. That is very common. So, well, that's what I really think often. Yeah. Yeah.
So as an end user, I think it's like a perfect example of like a coding glitch. So a couple months ago, I was doing some paperwork, and when you hit a certain button, it's supposed to generate a form where 3 people are supposed to sign. So about a week or 2 ago, we hit the same button, and only one line was there for a manager to sign. So a manager came to me and he said, well, you were supposed to sign, and the other person was supposed to sign. So I hit the button, and I'm like, where am I supposed to sign? There's nothing here that says that, you know, me being this type of thing to sign here. So he had to kick it back to IT because the developer, because there was a glitch somewhere. They'll have to close.
Yeah, and that's probably months or more after it's been originally shipped, right? So whoever wrote it either forgot about it, or, you know, someone else is going to work on it, or they're gone. They left the company.
Well, it
you know,
just seems to have disappeared because it was there about 3 to 6 months ago. The last time I looked at it.
Okay.
Now it's just gone.
Well, that could have been a regression. That could have been just some random change in the intervening 3 to 6 months. Could have caused some cascading, you know, effect where that thing ends up being disappeared because it's conditional. You know, whatever it's conditional on has changed somehow. You know, maybe.
They still haven't figured it out.
Really? Yeah, that's sounds like fun. Yeah. How long ago was that?
We discovered this about 2 weeks ago.
Okay.
That the 2 signature lines were not there, and he thought it was. He came to me and said, you know, you were supposed to have this person sign, and you were supposed to sign. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, you know, I didn't read any of this fundamental. I hit the buttons, and there was nothing for me to sign. The one person who it did prompt for a signature had already signed.
Yeah.
There was nothing for me or the other person to sign.
Well, so it sounds like either the code in that case is very hard to understand. Maybe it's not commented well. Maybe it's not refactored correctly or well. or maybe the person who's supposed to fix it has a list of, it's number 87 on their list of things they have to fix. So it could be either one of those, yeah, or both. It could be both.
So I just wanted to share that I actually experienced this.
Yeah, I will try to think of an anecdote of the last time I looked at code that I wrote and was like, what is this? Like, who wrote this code? Yeah. I can't think of it offhand, but it's very common. It's very common. Okay, so basically what I'm saying is if you just sort of put more work into naming variables well, indenting functions, having comments, having consistent tests and typing, if you use typings, are going to often pay off later. And this is something that's like hard to, you have to sell this idea to a lot of people. A lot of times someone will be saying, well, this is a business. We just need it to work. We just need, if it's working, what's wrong? Why don't we just ship it? Or like, how hard would it be to just get it to work as quickly as possible? And like having to pitch this well is like, it's very tricky because it's sort of like, you're not always sure yourself that, oh, we're going to go work on it in 6 months. But if you do this all the time, you're going to go work on a lot of that stuff in 6 months. And it's going to be, it's going to basically slow everything down at that point, So it's like you're trading, you're going into debt. You're going into a kind of debt if you do that. And the last thing is really just, if you find a really cool way in JavaScript to like slice up an array or do like some kind of thing which is like really, really cool, like one line and it's just like this, don't necessarily do it just because it's really cool or really small or whatever, because that doesn't really, there's no value in that. There's the value, well, there's value in something being compact because you can see a lot of code on one screen and you don't have to scroll around a whole bunch, sure. But beyond that, like, it's often like, well, it's not as valuable to have code that's really cool and clever as it is to just have code which is easy to go back to and understand what it's doing. And this is a little hard to calibrate sometimes because you might be working with people who are like, oh, they're all wizards. Like, we're all like wizards at this and everybody understands how this thing works, and that, so you might have a certain level where it's like, well, this thing, everybody's super comfortable with it. So we have some really stuff would be really tricky to a beginner or to somebody who's hasn't spent time with it. And that's fair. Like if you get a benefit from that, that's fair. But then let's say you onboard someone new and they have less experience or they're just not familiar with it. Every time you try to do that, they're going to be like, they're going to hit the same wall. So in general, yeah, like it's not always good to do the most cleverest way to program something. That's yeah.
And I was going to add, you made a comment that where you said, someone will say to you, well, how hard is this to fix? And it's easier when talking to someone else who has the same or almost the same level of technical expertise as you. But one of the hardest conversations I have ever had is trying to explain to a non-tech person why something is so hard to fix. And I think going in, if you ever had that experience, that's something that we need to be prepared for, because that could be the difference between your job and someone throwing you out the room.
Sure, and
canceling your contract altogether.
It could also be the difference between you just doing programming and not being able to like take charge of projects or do management or do some, sort of go into a position where you're in charge of more things. If you're good at communicating about these things, that skill probably counts for as much or more at a certain level of not necessarily just engineer sort of track. There's often like, oh, here's the engineers who are like extreme wizards at doing stuff with the computer, and they have sort of a career progression that's just like wizard level 6, wizard level 7. But you know, the other thing where it's like talking to people and working with people, that is like, you know, that's everywhere in business, and that's just as necessary, maybe, you know, more necessary in a lot of industries and on a lot of projects, is to actually be able to communicate to the people who do not understand and do not work with the actual technical details on a day-to-day basis or ever. So that kind of thing is, it's not an easy thing to do, but it's very, very valuable if you can do it. Yeah.
I have a former boss who thought it was really funny for him to put me out of his office, and his challenge to me was to bring this down to using terminology and explain it in a way that I can understand. Sometimes it would take me a couple of times, if I filled his head up with enough and he couldn't take it anymore, he'd be like, no, back to the drawing board. You have to make it simpler. And he had no problem putting me out of his office until I could come back and explain it in a way that he could understand it. You know, that was the biggest favor that he did to me for my professional life.
Just believing that there was a way that he could understand. Yeah.
It's like, you can do this, but back to the drawing board.
Yeah.
I'll see you tomorrow.
Yeah, well, cool. Okay, so this is basically what we've just been talking about, largely. Good software requires good communication in general. The agile method, using the continuous integration, it helps you ship early, ship often, get people using your software and talking to you about it and telling you what's you know, what they don't understand about it. You may have made probably some assumptions that are not true. And a user, or some when it's in the real world, those assumptions will actually be tested. And you know, you could work on something for years and be like, polish every little corner, and then one of your assumptions is wrong, and you just basically wasted a whole lot of time. So communicating with the customers. In your case, well, I'm not sure if your boss is your customer in your story, but the project has a customer, whether it's internal or external, you know, a user who's in the same company or a different company. The project absolutely has a customer, and understanding what they need, communicating what you need from them, those are very hard to master, and they're very valuable skills. There's a sort of like a pithy saying, like, you can have any two of fast, cheap, or good. I don't think that's actually true. I think it's a lot of times it's only one, because, you know, unless you do everything pretty well, you can't even have two of those. But you can't have more than two. You can't have fast, cheap, and good. In most cases, you can push the bar around a little bit with good practices, bad practices, but generally, if somebody says, we need this right away, and no, you can't have any resources, it's not going to be very good. Or, you know, if they say we need this to be extremely good and we need it fast, it's not going to be cheap. You're going to have to buy a whole bunch of either contract work or vendor products or something to do it, you know? Anyway, those are the things about DevOps that I kind of understand. Can you think of anything else that's like important? That's important about DevOps in particular, or any of those? I guess, you know.
So the way I like to think about DevOps is kind of like anecdotally. So back in the olden days of software developers, there was developers and operations, which is IT, and usually the flow was developers would build something and then they would toss it over the wall to IT, and they would wash their hands of it.
Yeah, right. Like, it compiles on my machine here. Yeah.
It's your problem. Yeah. So you have operations people who are not familiar with their product at all. They're familiar with the servers. And if something breaks, it would go to help desk, and help desk is like, maybe I need a developer to help me with this? Probably not, though. So what developer does, DevOps does, is it breaks them all. So it makes developers responsible for operations, it makes operations responsible for developers. Just kind of like makes a whole more holistic view of your ecosystem and your company. So ideally, when you have a product, it's not just owned by one person, it's kind of owned by everyone. It makes it a lot nicer to manage things.
Makes sense. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So, what time is it? So it's 6:30. We can do a little bit of review of Bash. And then, I'm thinking today, let's start signing up for stuff and getting stuff set up because you're going to want to run your servers on something. And I'm thinking we should just do Amazon. I've been going back and forth about this and like wondering what to do, like and it's like, well, Amazon's like, it's like the Walmart of cloud servers. They're like, there's this behemoth company that doesn't, they've got decent customer support compared to some. Amazon
Want to run your servers on.
for your capstone. For what I'm going to do is put up a server that just runs the chat app, or it'll be an Express server, JavaScript server. But what everybody else is going to want to do is run a server for their capstones. And one of the things we're going to have to do is buy domain names and then hook up the domain names that we're going to use to those servers. So all of that is spend money. Yes. Do we have?
We don't have money.
Well, so everybody has a stipend. Can we spend $2 or $3 on a domain name for a year? Or you can do it with an IP address if you don't want to use. Yeah. Well, so it's not strictly necessary, but if you want a .com or a .dot.
I have a
Oh. Okay, well, so Amazon has what's called a free tier. Have you signed up? Has anybody signed up for AWS? When did you do that?
4 weeks ago.
Max.
Okay. So you should.
2 or 3. I haven't signed.
You could sign up, you need a credit card, you could get a free tier for like a year,
Yeah.
something like that,
Yeah, so Amazon will let you do free
But
tiers
it's
for a
free.
year.
and then after a year they'll charge.
Yeah, I have to say.
I think,
Okay, yeah. I'm not sure if HostGator will let you run like your own Linux boxes.
Not hosted or hosted.
I have Bitcoin.
INDR.
No, really, I do.
At the source site.
I brought that up as an idea.
I mean,
When you say run the bash shell, are you saying run the server? I mean,
Well, no,
we
this
use
is-
the bash shell.
so the bash shell is the terminal. It's the same terminal as in VS Code,
Oh, okay.
but it's something that runs on almost every server, common server. Even Windows can run bash technically these days.
So it's like terminal on the server.
It's terminal on the server, and often on the server there's only a shell. You don't even put Windows or clicking or any of that stuff on the server at all. There's no mouse, there's none of that. You can, but that's actually very hard to set up an X Windows server on your server and VPN, whatever your mouse. I never even do it. It's just shell.
So
Yes.
we'll send everybody that link for the GitHub,
Okay.
and if everybody gets on it, they can get, there's a couple places for like domain name and server. You don't have to pay.
Hosting. And
Well, so the Amazon will let the Amazon account free tier will let you rent a server for a whole year,
Yeah, it's right here on the GitHub.
and it's sorry.
It literally,
Can you post it in the channel?
he sent them to each student.
Oh,
All that kind
okay. So I didn't.
He sent it.
Thank you.
Here's this one. that you can go through here.
being for a reduced price.
She said she had.
So, hosting you can do it on Heroku, you can do it on DigitalOcean or AWS. And I was thinking,
I asked today to clarify that all the things that gets it while you're a student. I didn't know how long that meant. Some were you get a year. You get a year, or it said while you're a student. Yeah.
for a whole year.
It's hard to. And then what afterwards, because the terms and conditions are still have, but.
Yeah.
You just can't, I mean, you just can't.
No, I want to, it's a permanent project, but I want to keep going, so hopefully I'll be making money then.
Yeah, then you just.
This is your AWS skills that you will learn
Exactly.
using AWS.
That I learned here, exactly.
So there's employers and jobs and stuff. Yes.
If you
Part of
really
the-
wanted to do it on the sheet, if you don't mind opening up something on your home network, you can always get a real small here with Raspberry Pi for $35. Measure stuff and do it. You just hook it up, you can let it run. It's not gonna be super fast, and you don't have great bandwidth. You don't have your connection, so that goes down. Your project
You-
goes down.
So the other thing about that though is you don't always get a constant IP address from your internet service provider or even an internet IPv4. Your internet plan, they might rotate your IP address at any time and give it to someone else. And I think you have to pay extra for a static IP address, right?
Yes, but you can also get around it using a dynamic DNS service.
Which is free.
Yeah. In DNS, if you can get that and you can use your domain to make a CD to point to your dynamic DNS.
Okay.
I've worked this out before.
Hmm.
I was poor once.
Yeah, I wonder.
I don't have to remember though, but yeah, I'm sorry.
I mean, if you want to run it.
I just remember, because it was Amazon, they already have my credit card information, so. I just signed up.
Does anyone know how to AWS would be active?
Right.
You know, it's generally with a database plus a server to run it, it's probably $20 a month for the small version. It's not crazy expensive.
But if I'm already have domain and hosting through. You picked already, then I probably.
I mean, if you don't have to, you don't have to use this. I mean, this is largely, I think a lot of this is largely for education purposes and for if you want to run your capstone. And I think, the free tier will cover that. And, I think everyone we'd be happy to like help set up or transfer that to a more permanent, hosting that's easier to maintain, or, it's not going to be built by Amazon. We can absolutely help with that. But I think like for just the purposes of learning the how to use something which is pretty common and which will help you with your capstones, I don't think it's going to be that hard. Everyone just remember to turn it off.
I'm gonna go ahead and sign up for this, because as you all have been saying, it's just good for us to get to know how to use it.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is real, I mean, we could do Heroku, but it's a similar thing where you have to subscribe to it. And I don't, I'm not sure if we had time to do more than one thing this week. And that's sort of why I was like, well, we should try to learn the one that the most people these days are going to be doing at jobs, but well, I mean, I think most of them would give us this very similar skills, maybe translatable. I think it's sort of a default choice just because it's the most marketable skill in particular of all of them. If anybody, I don't think most people wouldn't care that much, but it might make a small difference. So I don't know. Would everyone want to do that? Sign up with the GitHub student account?
Not Amazon.
No, with the GitHub pack.
Okay.
Sign up for Amazon, and we can start up a little server and try it out today if you want.
Is that what I am doing with the sheets that?
Yes.
That just put up?
You're looking for it on the thing.
No, so that's,
I'm wondering if it's the same.
so I would follow the link from the GitHub page because that gives you like $100-something in credits, none of which I think we're going to use right at first because if they're free tier, I don't think they get used.
I'm not signing up for it. Yeah, that's an idea. That's what Bill, yeah, Jessica said that. Yeah, just across the board. It's not take it, yeah.
Everything.
Okay.
So once you click on the link, where would you go to sign up? 'Cause I'm
I don't actually have the GitHub link. I wonder if Will can just send me one to do a demo with.
I have the link, but it did go to the page, and now it's asking me to upload mine.
Yeah, I worked the first time.
Yeah. I want your student ID. The last time I just get on this link.
Okay, so
I'm leaving it open.
I guess like I already have my account. I need to try to get everyone set up.
It says upload from your app.
Yeah, or like,
Oh, it's just please upload an image of your school ID or other proof of affiliation. Please make sure that at least
Yeah,
one,
so did you have?
please make sure that at least one of the administrators are academic status.
First, put it on
But how are people signing up?
and then I said,
What's the one that says it's paying you?
sent me.
I'm not sure.
Oh,
Yeah, like,
And you regenerate my thing. I say whatever.
well, not because it was the income academic.
It goes to actually answer. So,
Oh,
yeah.
I
Okay.
So then, I got,
Okay.
I think what, yeah.
Oh, okay, so let me just hit the tab.
Oh, he said he's gonna send us all.
So
the records.
mine says, it says, we're, okay, so it says, we're so glad you're here.
I saw the first one, the one that you just had up.
And so when
Oh,
you
you're fine,
sign
okay, okay. Oh, he did, bye. He said he was gonna send us each one.
you just,
And that's what, that's what I asked him, and he sent me this, and then this one I hit on this. So I went to the page, do everything on it, but now. Oh, no, wait. Now this time. These are all the things you get.
Oh, but it's got your email.
So that's extremely weird. But now you can just. Go back to stuff.
Oh, mine didn't even show.
So here's digital, you know, now I have it for some reason. I have all these. So there's digital ocean.
I don't know if you agree.
Take a screenshot of
Because I
this.
asked last week, I saw one. Okay. Today,
I didn't solve it.
yeah,
Just
yes.
I'll
send him, okay, that's right, asking.
this particular. So, guys, we already have our domain name and we already have a web service.
Oh, it's the-
Yeah.
I have a WordPress domain name.
Yes.
Oh, honestly,
Yeah, when you hit the link.
I am like, my head is swimming with all of it. I thought that was just, yeah,
No.
so I got a blog link on WordPress
Okay.
for my thing,
Yeah, that's,
and then I linked that to the green geeks.
okay, that is.
And now, but my app, I have not tried to link up to.
So when I
Okay,
used to,
so when, yes, you are, I think you probably.
yeah, but mine has.
Does anybody try to sign up for a session on the calendar? We should
Yeah, I
do a
got
session.
it, because
We should do a session.
I'm like swimming and like, I'm not making this up, my dog is ready. Check every stinking.
Your
cheat
dog
sheet.
literally ate your homework.
Literally, I've gotten this far in life without ever having to use that excuse, and here I am. So, I mean, it was like confetti, there was no salvaging it. Took me all weekend even to text that out, to like conceive of the, like just to put it into words.
I would say let's just work on, let's try the server stuff.
Okay.
Just for the purposes of the class, and even if you're not gonna use a career capstone. And definitely set up a time on the calendar if you want to go through your host, your host.
And then after I realized that my notebook was on, everything else bled out. So anyway, I feel like I'm losing my. But I often feel that way, so I really don't. But anyway, here is DigitalOcean, which can't you use that?
Sure, but they don't have a lot of things that Amazon does have.
Okay.
It would be an alternate
Okay.
choice, but
So what I have on Green Geeks,
yeah.
is that bad too? Should I go?
No, it's absolutely fine to use whatever you want. I'm not saying that.
I mean, I don't really care, I just want to.
DigitalOcean, you shouldn't use
Okay.
Green Geeks, or you shouldn't. I'm saying that
No, I
one
just,
thing that I want to walk through
okay.
is just the one that, I only want to walk through one thing rather than.
I was just trying to solve Elizabeth's
Yeah.
problem,
Yeah.
but I'm not even sure she still has it, so.
Okay.
You should just. ignore me today, I'm not sure. I have that,
Sure.
I have that.
Okay, so you can log into AWS?
I think we all can, can't we? Because we had a CIC.
That was for Max's.
Yeah, but he set up something and we all could use it, though.
That was just for Cloud9, I think.
Oh, Cloud9. See,
Yeah.
when he started that, it just prompted me to add my credit card information.
Yeah.
So I
You know
actually
what?
signed up.
You're not
Oh.
gonna get anywhere with the student one either, because, it wants a student ID through the school, like student email address through your school, and if your school doesn't provide one, then it wants you to attach the front and the back of your school ID for further review.
Is that for all of them?
No, that's for the Amazon one.
So you need hackers.
Oh, you need to get email addresses.
So,
Yeah, because I say, so I have one, that will be signed on.
Just sign up for a normal AWS account. Shouldn't have actual charges for the first year. It's free tier server, and I think there's a free tier RDS too.
Free tier.
Yeah, so I don't think there would be any charges. As long as you don't- have any charges. charge money for the domain. You don't need to do the domain today or set it up. You really don't need a domain at all. You can rent an IP address from Amazon. Free.
And they give you a nice, it's just like a URL.
Yeah. And so Amazon can give you URL for your server automatically.
So if somebody.
Well, you probably want a domain that's into it. It's like a name that you get, which is sort of advertising, share. If you started a real company, branding, you want an actual domain name, which has your brand name. And we'll go through that exercise. You don't have, nobody has to buy a domain name, but we can check out how to do that and what that is. Okay, so yeah. So does everyone have once you get Amazon, has everyone been able to log in to AWS and see something like this? It should say AWS Management Console. Yeah, I think it probably makes sense to just sign up for just a regular link. You know, you'll get 12 months of free tier, and we're not going to use resources that are not free tier. Let me make sure that we can even do a Postgres hosted database in the free tier.
I'm getting.
Yeah, there's a free tier. Cool.
Just ran into a problem. I mean, they won't take anything out of your account until, so, yeah, so it definitely won't, when you get your first invoice, you just see how much it costs, and say, oh,
So in general, if you have AWS, then even if you leave it for a year, and even if you rack up a huge charge on your bill, they'll give you a freebie. They'll say they'll say we're not going to bill you this one time. So, you know, but I know I guess it is kind of, yeah, it is. Yeah. Or like a giant GPU instance or something. But yeah, I mean, we can. I think it makes sense to just, you know, shut down the account or make your new employers pay for it before the 12 months are up.
Just quietly move your feet over. Yeah.
Okay, so I guess I do have an account, so where do I go?
So,
You feel like that?
are you logged into it, or are you trying to find
I
log?
let me log in, but now I went to email that they sent me and I got into the my profile, but according to this, I do have an account.
or close. Click on services. What's on the top? Actually, just click the AWS. So if you want to get to the page that Gus is on, you can just click the AWS load the services, and that should bring it back to the page. So the management console homepage. Right here, sorry.
I'm already, I just had to reset my password.
Oh, yep. Right here. Yeah. There you go.
That's one of the best questions I've ever.
So did you sign up? Okay. So that's slightly different. I guess you can try it at least. So go back to AWS, the console there, the sign in. Sign in using breakout credentials. Yeah. So I'm try putting your email.
Oh, so you just registered.
You can. I don't know if that's considered free here. Those are things so you might charge.
That's $12.
Yeah. Give that a shot. Oh, okay. Yeah, you can save it if you want. That's just inside of Chrome. I think so, yeah. You have any trouble?
They buy the ads so that they get on top. That's pretty funny. And the typing in AWS, Amazon, search Microsoft,
It's the only way they can fight back.
Yeah. All right, so one of the first things you see on the management console is this box here with services, and you can find services. And if you expand down here to all services, they have a ton of different internet stuff, and a lot of it is like sort of competing with itself. Like they make one thing that competes with another thing, or something that uses a trendy, like, you know, Kubernetes or whatever. They're like, they jump right into that market and throw together a solution real quick, and then, you know, so that they can offer that to all their customers. So a lot of this is just very confusing, and, you know, they have Amazon managed blockchain. Like, oh, if you want to make your own blockchain, but it's managed by Amazon. Anyway, we're not going to use most of this. The first one here in compute, EC2, is like probably one of the most common ones, and it's all we're going to be doing today. This is just run Linux somewhere on the internet. So somewhere that's not your computer and that other computers can connect to. Run a Linux operating system somewhere there. And if we collapse this back down, we can see that below here, there's build a solution, and they suggest some like little tutorials. And we can pick launch a virtual machine right away to do the first one, which will bring you right to the same place, the EC2 page. And it'll take you right to the brand new instance thing. So this thing will let you set up all the settings for a server, and then you'll have your own server. Want to get ahead, some of these options are going to be a little scary. First one is, what kind of server do you want to run? And here's a bunch of Linuxes. Amazon makes their own Linux. There's Amazon Linux 2. It's like the sequel to Amazon Linux. There's Red Hat Enterprise Linux. There's SUSE. I would say Ubuntu is like pretty common. And how do you feel about Ubuntu in general?
I tend to use it more.
Yeah, I mean, we use Ubuntu. I think it's one of the most common things. If you're running a server here, you'd run Ubuntu server, and it's free tier eligible. So I'm going to select this Ubuntu server 1804. Now this here, these options are CPU architectures. So x86, the one that it's selected by default, is in general like more power consuming and possibly a little bit faster still these days, but it's more expensive if you're actually paying for it, I think. And you need to do some special, optimizations and stuff to use ARM instead. And I think a lot of that is a little bit, it's tricky because you never know when you'll try to install something and it won't work because it's ARM. So it's going to be a little harder. We're going to leave that default, and we can select Ubuntu server here.
I'm sorry, which one did we just select? Red Hat Enterprise?
Ubuntu server 1804. Oh, 4 hours to activate.
Oh, I didn't have it. Yeah, that's why. I'm in the same boat.
Next screen, probably want to leave on the default because it says free tier eligible. You really want to look for this thing when you're doing anything. Make sure it says free tier eligible, because then you won't get billed for it. Okay. Okay, so we can go just next right through here, leave that on the default. Number of instances, 1. Okay, there's a whole bunch of stuff that you can mess with. It's really not necessary usually to mess with this unless you know what you're doing. This might give you a little cheaper. This basically says only give me computing power when other people's stuff is idle. So this is like, it'll take a little longer to start up, and it might be a little slower at times, but you get a discount on it if you're actually paying for it. So we're not actually paying for it, so we'll just leave that off. This, we should leave this alone. This puts it in a virtual network. So it's like, has a router, it sort of has a virtual firewall, and it's either you can make it blocked off from the internet, or what we're gonna need to do is open up a port to the internet so we can SSH into it and log into our server that's on the internet somewhere, right? Yeah, all of this, I would leave it the same. I don't even know what most of this is. Tenancy. Oh, this is like, you can say, I want my own physical plastic box running my server. And then they charge you a whole lot more money. But, you know, it's like theoretically more secure. Run this. So all of that is I'm going to leave alone on this page. So go next. We couldn't go to the blue button and just say skip all this, but I want to just go through the pages. This is like the storage you get, the hard disk basically. We're going to leave this the same, or all the default. Next, you can add tags. This only makes sense if you're running many servers and you want to group them by you know, certain things. Security group. You know, I think I'm going to rename this one. It's called Launch Wizard 1. I'm going to call this CIC Capstone, or CIC Project Server. And this you can leave alone, but I'll leave that alone. So I'm going to rename this just to be a little more descriptive. And you can see here, the default settings means the port 22 is open to the internet or to any IP address, which is what we're going to need if we want to log in. We have to use what's called SSH and log in to this server. So
I'm sorry. Oh.
I bet you refresh.
Go to your account, there's like a dashboard, your account, your billing dashboard, so you can see
And
exactly.
there's one more thing we're going to do today, which is set up an alarm to send you if you're spending or going to spend more than $5 a week.
Okay.
Send everybody, you get a text message or an email, or tell you you're using it. So nobody should get that email because you should be spending nothing.
I have a question.
Yes.
So I've just been able to access my AWS account.
Yeah.
The Ubuntu server, did you pick the very first one that was on the list?
Yes.
18.04. Okay. And 64 bit.
just skip that to the end. But I went to the last page and I changed the name of my security group on step 6.
When you say skip. This one. Oh, you did.
Change anything except steps.
Okay, so I just click.
I did not. That makes sense. It's a hard drive on the cloud service. It's not your data. It's not. That's yeah, sure things. Nobody can access that hard drive. Just okay. It's defined. Actually, the server you're running. So yeah, step 6. Only port number 22 is open. Port number 22 runs what's called an SSH server. So that's you log into it. But we're going to generate the keys to log into this right at the end. And nobody without the key will be able to log into it.
Okay.
Yes. So 22 is a standard for SSH. And all the servers will be in different addresses. You'll get a kind of like web address for your server. And you'll be able to SSH at that address. But yeah, so you'll need to generate the key at the very last step. So I think Kate could probably, you're good? You can, okay. Okay, so on step 6, I've changed the name.
I have a question. So
Yes.
on step 3, we didn't change anything, right?
Yep,
So now I'm up to add storage.
yep. I didn't change anything on step 4 or 5 either.
Okay.
So step 6 is the only thing I've changed other than selecting Ubuntu. I didn't change anything else. And this is just a preference. I want to name this security group something that I understand what it's supposed to be, so that when I go to look at this, I'm not like, what's Launch Wizard, whatever, because it's it's for, it's pretty important to get this right, because if you expose the wrong port to the internet, someone could hack your server maybe.
So we just want to put in something that makes sense to us, or?
Yeah, I called mine CIC-project-server, but you can call it whatever you want. It could be the same as that or different, or you could leave it Launch Wizard, but this is my preference. Yep, okay, and then we're gonna do review and launch. Now, we see it has a summary of all this stuff. We didn't touch anything except the name of this security group, but this all looks good. So I'm gonna click launch, and this is the last step. This is a very important step. So as soon as you click launch at the very end down here, it's gonna pop up a window that says, select an existing key pair or create a new key pair. So this is going to give you cryptographic keys, which lets you log into your server. And it's very important that you keep these. Probably, maybe if you have a thumb drive that you trust and you keep with you, you might want to even back them up and keep it with you, because these are keys that will let anyone with these keys will be able to log into your server. So these should stay secret. Everybody should keep their own on their own computers. But what we'll do is, rather than choose existing ones, everybody can say create a new key pair in this first dropdown. The launch button.
Oh, okay.
So as soon as you click launch, it will prompt. And then you're going to want to pick select the second option, the first drop down, create a new key pair.
So I have to finish this right now.
Really, you could watch the video and do the last part later. It's only a couple steps.
Yeah.
We're going to be able to SSH in your
What is it? I mean, that'll pop up. I have this one. Oh.
Just watch this and you can do
Yeah, I guess that's what I'm.
just give it a count.
Yeah, I'm done.
Oh, no, so, this is just the name, that's fine, that's just so you can recognize the bigger problem. Yes. Well, that's the file that you get after this stuff. Right.
Three steps.
Yes.
So,
Yeah.
okay. Yeah, it should, it's not gonna make much of a difference. And in fact, once we SSH into our servers,
This part is
there's
just,
just gonna be no bits. It's
not
just,
like
it's not secrets here once those.
so sometimes you
The
have
same
multiple
kind of
keepers,
thing.
you want to know which one is which, so you get
This name.
so signifies what they keep your kids to.
CIC.
I really, really. But similar, so your address is like your public key. And then your private key is how you decrypt stuff that encrypts with your. So it's your public key gets. Right, so you, but your public key can take to a remote server. And that makes it so that you keep somebody with your private key.
So, so once you've selected create a new key pair, everyone here, you're just gonna name it something. I'm gonna call this CIC or CIC. I'm just gonna call it CIC Amazon key. I'm gonna call it.
Just have your own name.
Yeah, you can, but it has to be. It should be something you recognize. I called mine CIC-Amazon-key. And then you want to click this button, download key pair, and it will download it. And that's a very, very important file. You don't want to lose that. You don't want to show that to people because it's kind of just full of random characters if you want to look at it, but it's secret characters that let anyone log into your server. We call this a we're going to move that. We'll move it from the downloads folder pretty soon. Yeah, that's fine. All it's out right now is just save it. Yeah.
So
It's in your download folder. Okay, so everyone's downloaded the.
No.
Yep. Really?
Yeah. I don't know. I'm scared. Okay, create a new one. What do I do?
You're not gonna get back to me.
What do I? I'm scared.
I guess we'll find out. So I guess we gotta wait until we get that email.
What does that do? That's just a password?
No, it's just a name to recognize.
Oh.
And yeah, you don't have to get it right, just so you know what it is, and then download it. And then as soon as you've downloaded it, you're sure you've downloaded it, you can click launch instance.
if you get it wrong, it's no big deal. You just do the wizard again.
You start a new one. Oh, okay.
So,
This doesn't limit you to how many
Take
you can
honestly.
start.
Did anyone get to the point where it asks you to wait while it's
I got launch failed.
lunch?
Okay.
Yeah.
Lunch fail.
Yeah.
it's- Yeah. But it's just like it's trying to verify that you have access.
It's all in minutes.
I mean, you know,
Says it usually only takes a few minutes. You want to take a break now and see if it does it when we.
Yeah, let's take a break. Let's see if it works when we come back. And we might have to do just some lessons for the rest of today and regroup tomorrow. But I'm going to say launch instances. I've downloaded the key pair. Let me make sure. Yeah, there it is. Okay, launch.
that is that's a normal site.
So there's one.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I've had this account for like many years, so.
Up to, but it says normally goes all 10 minutes.
Lovely. All right, well, we're going to go to a break, 15-minute break. And I have some more slides on Bash. We might just do some Bash stuff.
We can't do that.
Can do Bash, yeah. All right. So how do I pause, mute? All right. See you after the break. Okay, it looks like some people's instances are working after a couple minutes, so maybe a couple minutes. Oh, I just saw Eva. She said, "Could someone let me in at the side door?" But that wasn't 5 minutes ago, was it?
I don't think so. I just answered like.
Was it like preemptive?
Could be. Let's see.
Okay. Yes.
That's cool.
Say use existing.
And she's like, the same night that Overton was there. Yeah. Oh, he did that. He did his. He said he's on. Yeah, I can show you.
Okay, my work is done.
You know, you drive up the hill, that's what you drive. Drive to the hill, and you drive straight. I drive up the hill. One side you.
Oh, yeah. But she was like, I really don't want that.
Yeah.
So it worked now.
Cool. Looks like everyone's able to get in after a couple minutes. Jaquay, did it work? On this page? The green and the blue? Okay. Is anyone not able to see this green and blue page. Okay.
Oh, that's a security group. You go. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, sorry.
Okay. Let me make sure we're live here. Yeah.
And then check that out. Yeah, there we go.
Okay, so what we want to do right away is set up this thing, this billing alert, because this will just be a little watchdog. It sends you an email. If you're actually spending any money, it will email you to notify you to turn off whatever it is. And so we're going to click create billing alerts on this blue notice. And there's a very easy one here that says receive free tier usage alerts. So this will basically send you an email if you are going to basically use up the free credits that they give you when you start your account. You'll get an email for that. So you can add your email address here. And then there's another checkbox you can do to say receive billing alerts. And this basically, you probably want to leave this checked because then you can set custom billing alerts to say like, well, if you're actually spending money, you can set a billing alert to say, if I spend more than $10 in a month, send me an email. And then this is legacy. I'm not sure what that, I would just leave that alone, but I would put your email in here and then save preferences. So that's pretty much that whole thing. Then you can close this window because it is, come on, get out of the way. That's all that's on that page. So if everyone wants to do that, that's a really good idea. Send you a notice. Money. Did you see all that? Okay, cool. So we have the instances are now launching. And it says how to connect to your instances. It may take a few minutes until they're in the running state and usage hours and such. So click view instances to monitor your instance's status. Once they're in the running state, you can connect to them. There's a little link that says find out how, but we can just do that with our new keys. It's pretty straightforward. We're gonna, where's view instances? It says click. Oh, cool. So in the bottom right, it's at the bottom right. There's a blue button. Well, so from anywhere on the whole AWS, you can pretty much always click services at the top. You should be able to click services and then find EC2 or type EC2 here. And these are, the EC2 again is just the servers that run on the internet. And then if you click to that, you'll end up at this page, which has running instances here. And you can click on the running instances to go to the list of instances. Now, there's a bug that happens sometimes that I've seen where this thing, the sizing of it goes way up, or it goes so far up you can't see like any of your instances. And to fix that, I believe you have to click here or something and then drag this. So these things help you resize it. If you can't see anything, sometimes it's just not resized correctly, and I hope they fix that. or they've already fixed it. But that got me several times, like, where's all our instances? They're gone. But no, it's a bug. And this is what we pay Amazon good money for. Buggy software. In general, the rule is if it's something that affects the uptime of like a customer's products, they will fix it. If it's anything else, they don't care and they won't help you. Yeah, they don't care whether the UI is easy to use, whether it's, because it's like, well, you know, what else are you going to use? Everybody uses it. They're like Walmart anyway. Okay, so we have this list of instances. Does everybody see a new instance? And does everybody see that it says t2.micro? Does anybody not see T2?
Okay, I was there and I must have done something. I went back.
Okay.
It took me all the way back to my.
Just confirm. I'd like everyone to verbally confirm that it says t2.micro.
Yes.
Okay. So go to services. You can click EC2 or type EC2. And then go to run instances or back. So it says T2 micro. Okay, very good. All right, so now we are ready. If it says running here, that means that you should be ready to log into the server. And we're going to do that with the key file that we just downloaded. So does everyone want to use just Visual Studio Code terminal for this too? We're going to end up going into the server terminal and we'll be on the server, but we can do it from any terminal we want, just like with Docker, just like with the Postgres shell or any of that. So does everyone prefer, I'll do it in VS Code terminal? Okay. So I'll bring up the sandbox. And I think tomorrow what we might do is start a repository. If you want to start a repository for your capstone, if you haven't already, I think it would be a good time to do that because we can start, setting up things that help deploy it, like a make file perhaps, or a continuous integration. I can help you with any of that if you're interested. Right now, I'm just going to use the sandbox folder just because everyone already has it. So if we open the sandbox folder, then we have the terminal down here. And terminal, you can say new terminal, I guess, or view terminal to get this working. And we have this wonderful green line through the screen, but that's okay. So I'm going to bring this up so the terminal is really big, and then I'm going to do Command plus to make the text bigger. Later. And then, yeah, I'm just going to drag this all the way over so all we have is a terminal. Because we're not really going to need to do any kind of file stuff in our repository. It's all going to be on the Amazon server for right now. I'm in the Careers and Code Sandbox folder. The first thing I'm going to do is cd space, and then your downloads folder, everybody's downloads folder, I hope, should be at ~D_OW. And once you type that many letters, you can hit tab and it will complete the rest of it for you. If you just type DO, it could be documents or downloads and it won't complete anything for you. But all you have to do is type the DOW. So I'm going to CD to that. And now I'm going to go back to my browser and find out what the file name is. I called it CIC-Amazon-key, and then it puts .pem at the end of it. So from the terminal, now that I'm in my downloads folder, I'm going to say mkdir, which is make a directory. And I'm going to make this in tilde and then a slash and then a dot SSH. And this is typical. You may already have this, in fact, depending on what GitHub sets up or what VS Code sets up to use Git. So when I hit enter, it will say file exists. It already has that directory. You might see the same thing.
So you want us to pass on to VS Code sandbox?
It doesn't matter which project we're in VS Code. I'm just using the VS Code terminal because everybody's familiar with it. So I opened Careers in Code Sandbox, yes, though, and then open the terminal. So this .ssh file already exists, and we're in the downloads folder. So what I'm going to be able to do now is mv, which is move, space, and then I will say the file I downloaded is CIC dash, and I hit tab, and it knows what I'm talking about.
I didn't get that file. What is that SSH file?
That's a folder. So the dot means it's a hidden folder, meaning it doesn't show up normally. And .ssh in your home folder is a convention of where your computer will keep your SSH keys. It's hidden just because people shouldn't go snooping around in there. And it's called SSH by convention. So,
I don't know, it just gave me another prompt.
okay, so you probably didn't have it yet. Maybe because of how your GitHub was set up, but that's fine if you didn't, because all that means is it did make it. As long as you got the tilde and the slash and everything.
Okay.
So did you make it? Okay. So you can do this with the digital use my calendar. So, yeah. Good. Okay. No, it should be, you got to do cd tilde slash downloads first. Okay. Good. All right. So we're going to move this PEM file to tilde slash dot SSH, and that's it. So then we're going to go. So did everybody find the PEM file there in your downloads, and you've moved it? Okay. So now
I didn't put my key in downloads. I put it someplace else, so I'll move it over to downloads and then move it over.
okay. To add it to your SSH by default?
Yeah.
Ah, that sounds pretty nice, actually. Okay. Okay, cool. Okay, so if we do cd now tilde slash dot SSH, we will change to this new SSH directory. I'm going to post all of these commands in order because that's a good thing to do. cd downloads, mkdir tilde slash SSH. I get the error, but that's okay. MV, I'm going to say what you named your key .pem, and then cd tilde slash .ssh.
So if you get the prompt, then it's all good.
Yeah, so if you get the prompt, do you see at the beginning of the line .ssh,
Yeah.
that means you're in that folder. So you're all set. Now, here's the last thing we need to do before we can use our new key file is chmod 400 and then the name of the file. So CIC that. And I'll add this to the And the reason we have to do this is because if you remember a while back, we did chmod plus X on stuff to make it executable. This is an alternate way to change permissions. All we're doing is saying, here's permissions on the file, and you have to lock them down to say, like, the permissions are very locked down on this file. 400 means nobody but the owner can do anything but read the file. So nobody can modify it, nobody can execute it, only the owner can read it, nobody else can even read it. So we need to set these permissions, because if we try to use the SSH client and say, here's the file, it's just sitting in the downloads folder or whatever, it will complain. It will say, you need to change the permissions on this file because it is a very sort of important, this is the keys to your entire server. You have to be very careful with it. So, that's all we should have to do is set that up, and now we should be able to use it to SSH into our server. So if we go back to the console, the web browser with AWS, and you find your instance, again, anytime you can go back to the home page. I'll show how to navigate back from the home page, so, or from any page. As long as you see the services up here, you can click services. You can go to EC2 here or type EC2 and click that. And then you'll find this here with one running instance. Click that, and you should be back on this page. So if you click on this row to highlight this server, you'll see information at the bottom. And the first thing, one of the first things you see is public DNS this. So you basically just want to copy this. So I'm going to highlight this and Command C, copy. And then go back to my VS Code terminal. And we can do SSH -I. And then we do CIC Amazon key. So we're in the folder where we saved it. We're giving this an argument to this program called SSH, which says, this is my identity. This is how I'm proving that I'm allowed to go to this server. And the server is going to recognize this key. It's a very sophisticated math thing that goes on where the keys are asymmetric. They're not the same key, but the server has one and I have one. And they actually are linked mathematically so that I can prove that I'm allowed to log into the server without the server even having my key or without me having the server's key. So we do the -I and then the name of your key, and then you're going to paste what you copied. So I'm going to add this to the and I'll keep this little naming convention, what you named your key. And then here is like, that's what you copied from Amazon. It'll be different for everybody. Yep. And you should see this thing, which is like, the authenticity of this host can't be established. The ECDSA key fingerprint is SHA-256 : you're going to see something different there. Are you sure you want to continue connecting? Well, we just copied this from the Amazon console. We know this is our server. You copied it correctly. So yes, we need to tell our computer that it's like, yes, this is the key for this remote server. It all checks out. We know what we're doing. So it shouldn't ask you again because it's going to save that you said yes into a file somewhere. But yeah, it's going to ask you that the first time because it's like it doesn't know what this server is or whether it's bogus or whatever. So now, did anyone else get connection closed?
Yeah.
Everyone got that. Oh,
Oh, sorry, no, CP.
that's great. Well, that's great. So I'm going to put I'm going to hit up, and then at the end of this, I'm going to put a -V. And this will print out some more stuff, which will hopefully let us, yeah.
And then config. Space. SSH. Oh, our research or Dallas folder.
Offering public key, this is a different key. So what do people see with, when you see offering public key and then something? Do you see the name of the thing you just saved?
Where are you?
Yeah. Can you move the-
Oh,
If you do the -V at the end of that last command,
Yeah. I see what.
do you see something that says offering public key?
no.
Oh, it's
I don't
config.txt.
think
That's why I couldn't find it. So real quick, instead of doing CP first, you move config.txt.
Mine says found.
Found key.
Yeah, I got that too, found key.
I don't know anything with offering.
It just says rekey after.
Okay, let me see what.
What is yours? Yeah, IP, sorry. Yep. Sure. Config.txt. And just make sure. Okay, cool. Now you can do the
Oh,
that's.
Okay, how about this? Maybe this, I'm gonna try copying this second
Oh, we did
thing.
that stuff already.
IPv4 public IP.
Oh, okay, sorry. So let's see your.sh directory.
So instead of this thing we copied up here,
Oh, yeah, I got it.
this public IP address.
Front of it.
And there's a little link next to it for copying it, so you can just click that.
Wait, technology.
Oh, why is Ubuntu closing?
Oh, your SSH key. No. Come on, fix your downloads.
So are we still
Oh,
on
there it is.
the text where it says the
It's already in there.
authenticity of posts?
So we have to
Can't
copy
be
that.
stabbed?
No, we said
You're
yes.
past that?
We said yes and then
Oh, we
enter.
said yes.
Yes.
It'll be easier if you do it from the terminal.
All right, well, I'm gonna try
Go back to
this
downloads.
first one real quick.
Oh, sorry, downloads in your terminal. I mean, let's see if you get the downloads. No, just regular downloads. So they only need the dot for the dots folder. Okay, so now I want to copy your EM file to your .ssh. Oh, slide those. Yeah, yeah. CP.
Oh.
Yep. Yes. .ssh. So that 2D slash stuff again. Cool. Okay. Yep. So we may need to add that back here.
This is great. So, yeah, I'm just trying a couple things here. Connect.
Go back to step 1 there.
So if you
Oh, sorry.
hold down Control and click on the instance,
Copy that.
there's a connect here, which pops up like, this is, see, we already did this step. So we did chmod 400 and then example. Oh, I'm just sorry, folks. I just wasted about 10 minutes. We need to give it the user that we're trying to log in as. So we can't just do the IP address and it doesn't tell you that you don't have the right user. We have to, right, right. So you can use the original thing you copied or the IP address you copied, but before this, you have to put Ubuntu at that.
Yeah, just like that. And then do 0 to 100. No, straight. Oh, sorry, space under chmod.
Okay.
And then your EM file.
Okay, so we'll do this one more time.
Yeah, that's fine.
So you're in?
Yeah.
Okay,
Okay, so now we're on.
so let me close this. This is the new one. I started another.
Hit up a couple times. Down. Yeah, there.
So I'm going to say terminate this second one. Don't do this. I have two because I'm
Oh, we're good.
just was panicking.
Cool.
All right. So everyone should only have one. You should be able to go to right click or control click and go to connect if you forget the command. And you should be able to basically copy this entire line and basically take that and paste it into your VS Code terminal. And as long as you're in this folder, it should work.
Yeah. Okay, let's not use that. Okay. Let's give it a shot.
Yes.
So type VI.
And to type it out, it'll be SSH-I. They put quotes around it, but you shouldn't really need them.
Okay, sorry.
And then Ubuntu at
Okay.
this thing.
So type J 4 times. Okay. And then L a couple times. All the way over until you get to ID underscore RSA. Highlight the guy. I use J. So VI is weird because you use HTML. It hurts when you use it. You just like J is
You should see a green thing. And
a couple more times. Mouse over the I. Or not mouse over, sorry. Cursor over the I. Now hit D. And then type the $sign. So the other side is a reference to end of the line. So that stands for delete to the end of the line. Okay,
Is everyone seeing this green prompt?
that stands for append. So now see how you're insert mode, that means you can type stuff. So now hit command V and then paste in your file. Okay, now hit,
Calling the
escape.
soothing sound.
And now for the last one part, type colon. WQ.
I typed into.
There we go. Congratulations, you survived your first experience with VI.
What's the purpose of that? Because I mean, they're great, they're all asleep.
Yeah, it's old. So there's a lot of people who used computers in the 80s who still remember it. So they just keep using it, I guess. Theoretically, once you get the muscle memory down, it's a little bit faster to treat words, but it's so complicated unless you really want to learn. Yeah, it's really worth learning here. I think that's it. You scroll down a bit. Back over to the page.
That's a question.
Yeah.
You know how you put
Okay, so I think that's it.
permission?
Yeah. So now we can join this station into server.
That's a fun, it's like a side.
I was trying to look it up, but I was just
So
curious. Like,
SSH, go around the SSH command.
So the first, there's three numbers. First number is owner, second
Can you
number.
go back to AWS real quick?
Third number is number. 4 is read.
yep, and 0 is nobody.
Okay, right click
Zero
on,
is
or click actually.
zero, no permission.
Right.
So it's like owner has 4, third has 0.
How many digits can you have? Only those three.
And the digits are 1, basically 0 through
Yeah, that's what we did.
7, because it's 3 bits in each digit. So read, write, exit are 4, 2, 1. Add them together to get the number. So if you see chmod 5, that means read,
Trying to find
write, exit.
Oh, it's
plus 1.
Okay. So type you want to add.
Cool. I was just curious. Thanks.
Yeah, so it's
So actually copy everything.
okay.
Well, I typed the
Paste it in
components that you want to. I don't know how to say that. And it's telling
No,
me command not found.
Yeah, yeah.
Has anyone started the command with SSH?
Oh,
Check
no.
it.
So
Yeah.
Here's a thing you
There we
can
go.
copy right out of the.
You're on the server.
It's the
on
SSH.
AWS.
Yeah, SSH, but then dash.
Not really how they hack into servers, but
And then
it's just a
Usually
little
my
harder.
question.
the name of the file.
This is just how you remote access the server.
So let me go to
Yeah.
that slide. and see what this is.
And if it's in a different folder, you might
That's how you
have
do
to
it.
do something.
Oh,
Manually,
where
at least.
is it? I heard you
There's
said
different
we have to go
tools
to
you can
extensive
install that
down
will do it.
control.
Stuff for you automatically.
Control
For now,
and
at least, this is good. It'll get you up and running.
No, on the actual.
Oh, okay, all right.
Control.
Oh, control. And then
Nope, you're all set.
And that'll give you pretty much full instructions, but
Oh,
that's
this
the.
one.
I mean, if you ever need a reminder on how to do it, you can go back, log in AWS and you can click on yours and check connect. And I'll give you
The one thing is you have to be in the same folder as you.
I'm still in.
So we don't have to do that because we
Press
have
just
built in a
control
little
C
spline
right
there.
now to like clear out.
So we just need to do everything basically from step 4 down.
You go, you're in. So the default Ubuntu prompt is green like this. And I have a
Dash I
light background on
so
my
dash I
VS Code, but it
stands
should
for,
always be green.
that you can pass that your file name
And
to your
now
SSH
we're
key.
on the server. We're on the Amazon
But
server.
since you stored your SSH key, key chain, you can just slow that up. So you don't need to
So-
identify what you want to use.
Let's set up a very small little web server that everyone can use to just enjoy the fact that we've set up a server and it's somewhat useful. You know, now we can run an application on it. You can close your laptop, you can go home, and your server stays running, and it stays running, you know, theoretically forever. In reality, servers can break, they might get restarted. This is why you need DevOps. This is why you need practices to sort of have redundancies. And this is why you might prefer some stuff Alice is going to talk about, like serverless. It's like serverless. You don't need a server. You know, there's a lot more sort of maintenance-free direction you can go with this. But this will run. And if it has no bugs, and if you take good care of it, it will run forever. And you can run it, you know, it'll run from anywhere in the world. You can connect to it just like this. As long as you have the internet, you can get to it. And you can use it to host your API or connect to your database or whatever you need to do. So now that we're on the green prompt, we're going to say, we're almost out of time for today. So I wonder if we should do some bash. I think maybe we'll do some bash exercises tomorrow. And everyone just type these from rote. The one thing I'm going to show you from the bash slides and stuff is there's a command in bash called man. I don't know if you've learned about this. It stands for manual. And if you are like, what does ls do again? How do you use ls? How do you use cd? This is the one thing you want to remember what it is. And the one thing you want to remember how to use this, because this in theory lets you learn while you're writing the shell, you'll be able to learn how to use anything else. So if we're like, okay, ls, what did that just do? I don't know what that did. So I'm going to type man ls, and this opens a whole thing called a manual page or a man page, and it's got like, you know, it's sort of all right in the terminal, so it's a little hard to read typographically, but it has all the details about this. So ls, it's like this is the header of the page, I guess, and then there's a name which tells you ls, list directory contents, and then synopsis is like how to use it. ls, then a space, then option, and then possibly more options, and then a file, and then possibly more files. And if you keep hitting enter or down, or down or enter arrows, you can scroll through this page and read the full, basically the official instructions for using ls. List information about the files, current directory by default, sort by alphabetically if none of C, F, T, U, V, capital S, capital U, capital X, nor dash dash sort is specified. Great. Anyway, this kind of stuff is pretty advanced. It's like, it's not going to be a tutorial, full on, you know, in tutorial, but if you are, you know, get sort of the habit of understanding what these flags are, like these are flags, they're going to list all the flags down here. So dash, we did ls dash F before, I think. And that says, no, do not sort, enable dash AU, disable ls color. It does all of these. So you have to go track down what those are, I guess. But that shows all hidden files and everything too. If you do ls dash L, it'll show you, if we scroll all the way down to here, there's a lot of options. Use long listing format. So the way you quit this man page, it says H for help or Q to quit. So you can hit Q and you quit it. So if we do ls-L, this is called the long listing format. Now there's nothing in this directory, so we don't have it. But you can do the same for anything. Man CD, no manual entry for CD. Uh-oh, you're on your own. But CD is change directory. Let's see, man PWD. Why does CD not have a manual? That's maybe not. It's just CD and then the path. Yeah. Okay. So CD is pretty simple, I guess. And they're like, yeah, I don't need a manual for CD. Okay, but you can do man sed. This is a fun one. Have fun with this. Stream editor for filtering and transforming text, all in the command line. And it's got a bajillion options, and some of them are little. That's a fun one. Um, Yeah, yep,
That made the one.
yeah, man, explain.
Same
Whoa,
thing.
there's an actual explain command.
Oh, God, no.
So you can literally type man space explain and it does something. Very good. All right. Anyway, so that's, you know, should help if you want a quick reference for any of the stuff you're using. But for today, let's just get Node running. So we're going to say, we have to install Node first. So we're going to say apt, or do we need sudo? Let's see if we're going to need sudo. We're going to need sudo. Well, it's just sudo apt install Node. Oh, that doesn't work.
I think that can be
Node.js.
but not JS.
Really?
Oh, wait, do a sudo apt update.
Ah, okay. So we need to download the list of packages we can install first. So let me, before I forget all of this, I'm going to copy these for pasting. We do apt update. It'll print out a whole bunch of stuff. It's going to download all of the lists of packages. Thank you. I'm really glad you're TAing this week.
I knew all my days by myself. So chaos.
Yeah. Okay. And then we're going to do sudo apt install
I think it is.
Node. What's going on? All right, let's just look it up. Node Ubuntu installing Node.js via package manager. Oh, it's every single kind of Linux. Let's scroll down to, they don't even have Ubuntu. Oh, it's probably Debian, yeah. Debian and Ubuntu, official binary distributions. So we have to go to an extra link. This is great.
What is Debbie?
Ubuntu is like a kind of Debian. So Debian makes one kind of Linux. It's one organization. And then they're like, here's Debian. It's got basically Linux kernel plus some built-in stuff. And then plus a package manager, which is what apt is and all of that. So Debian uses apt. And then Ubuntu is like, we're going to put a bunch of packages that are like standard Ubuntu packages onto the top of that. And that's the Ubuntu release. Yeah. Really? Okay. That's really it. All right. And then I'll do a capital Y, and then it's off and running. And it's got a progress bar. It's pretty snazzy there.
So what are you doing right now?
We're installing Node on our web server so that we can then put our Node web server, we're putting Node on the computer we rented in the cloud from Amazon, so that then we can write our little web server with Express or with anything that's Node.js, and we can just start it up on this server, run it, and then connect to it from anywhere, and then we can just walk away and the server will stay running. We can close our laptops and it should still work.
So you have to sort of like upload everything that you want to use. Like you need to upload it like SQL.
So there's, in order to get the files onto this server, what we can do is use a thing called SCP, which is like SSH. So we just logged into this shell. This is like we logged into another computer across the internet. You can do the same, use the same kind of systems to copy a file across the internet. So we can copy whatever files we need. Once we're finished developing them locally and they work locally, we can say we're ready to ship this onto our server, and you can copy them across the internet with the same method. And there's actually a lot of other methods for deploying something, but you know that's a very standard one, is to use SCP to copy the files securely across the internet. Nobody will be able to read them. and it guarantees that only you are allowed to copy the files because you have that secret key on your computer.
So when you deploy the website, you need to upload like Bootstrap.
Yeah, so Bootstrap and the JavaScript front end, anything you build with React and stuff like that, we're going to be deploying those with a different system.
Okay, give that.
So in Amazon land, that system would be called S3. It's just a place for putting files. And that's much easier than any of this. All you do is you just say, click upload files, you put your files up, and you configure it a little bit, and then you can go to that website and run that JavaScript. For your backend, for your database, for anything you have to connect to that's not just downloading static files, they're called. If it's not just downloading files that has your Bootstrap or whatever, if it's actually dynamic data, if it's your database, if it's your web server, you're going to need something like this.
So is this kind of like what you were saying, Alice, about Docker? Like when you have Docker, you're sending it across to other people and everybody has whatever you use.
Yeah. So in this case, we can just install Docker on our server in the cloud. Then we can say Docker pull container. And then, assuming your container had your project code in it, your project would then be running on Docker on the cloud. So you can open up a port to your Docker container, and then your website would be live.
Okay, so I would put that on my server and I would use it on my, say that again?
So you would install Docker on your server.
Now, like this?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think it's like so whatever you do, like
Right, I mean, it
Yeah,
installs that, it works on my machine. probably.
Yeah. So
Okay.
this would be assuming that you've already have a Docker container that has your project up and running.
Right,
So
so
once
it's the
you
same thing.
Yeah.
So now I don't have to tell the server how to rerun stuff
So
because it's already got the package.
Yes.
Okay.
Everything
Yeah.
is inside. your
Now, what
Docker.
if we use Meteor?
Yeah, we can build a Meteor Docker container.
We would just do the
Right.
same thing.
yeah, you'd have a server like this in any case.
Yeah. Nope. Meteor just runs on Node.js, I believe. So you just have a Node.js Docker container, you have your Meteor code in there. You run the command to start your Meteor site. That all goes inside your Docker container. You probably need your database somewhere else that you can connect to it, but essentially your site Docker container just go right above the server.
Yeah, and once it's packaged up as Docker, when you tell it to the server, just run this container, the server doesn't really have to care. All it has is Docker. And you just say, here's the container. It doesn't even need to know really that it's Meteor, except to connect to the right ports maybe, or something that's in the configuration of the Docker. Okay, so I ran node -- version, and it's version 8, and I don't think the node.js is right. So I'm going to do sudo apt remove node.js. Yes, with a capital Y. I don't think it matters, but that's so fishy. It's really old version.
Tags maintainer versions are never
Yeah.
really what you want to use.
So I'm going to do sudo apt install node.js, no dot, because that's apparently, according to the internet, that's the right one.
Separate package.
Yep. And then I'm going to do a space and also install npm, which is the package manager. We're going to need that too. So they're different.
Okay.
Yep. No, yep, I'm serious.
So it was the same command as before, except instead of install, what you're saying.
Remove, yes. So I'll put all of these into the Slack in order. So those are all in the channel, all 4 commands. The 2 in the middle are the mistake, install this, and then remove this. And then the last one should be the right one. Install just the last one if you didn't do anything yet. And the first and the last one, yeah. All right, so now if we do node -- version, it's still 8, but whatever. I don't know. Oh,
Why is
why?
that bad?
It just seems to be an older version of Node.
Yeah, it's like an old, the current LTS is 10.
Okay, and the current latest stable is 12, I think.
Oh, is it?
Yeah,
Okay, so I'm on.
it's not LTS though. 10 is LTS.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. This is 1804. All right, it shouldn't matter at all. It's not going to matter for what we're doing.
I
So
think 8 has async. But I think we're okay.
8 has async
I
await?
think so.
Okay, all right, then it doesn't matter. We're all good.
So what is the difference between Node.js and Node.js? Is it just,
I think
is
they're
it just that the name is different for Ubuntu and it's the same thing?
They're probably maintained by different organizations, or
They could
that's,
be aliases.
they could be aliases, yeah.
Or they're
Uh,
using-
Aliases sound the same.
They both consult the same person.
Okay.
Means they're the same thing, they're just two names for it.
Uh-huh.
I love how Ubuntu is the hardest one to install correctly because it's a confusing link to just this giant README page. Are you kidding me? Where's the, what do you do? Like, this is absurd. Okay. Low impact.
So I don't
Yeah.
know if it's on default to that.
That's not Amazon. That's Ubuntu.
That's Ubuntu, yeah.
Yeah, but didn't it default to that particular machine first? Went to the launch of-
None of the machines are going to include Node. They're just Linux. They're just a server.
Yeah, no, I understand that, but when we selected Ubuntu,
Yeah.
wasn't that the default selection?
No, I don't know if there really is a default.
Amazon links is at the top.
Yeah. But no, I mean, Ubuntu is a good distribution. It's just kind of weird that Node, this is really more the Node people just having a weird kind of like organization for maintaining their Node thing for their Ubuntu thing than the other way around, I think. I don't know. Okay, well, anyway, the command in the chat is the right command, and we can get a server running in the last couple of minutes and connect to it real quick here. We'll actually see a real server. So we need to do basically npm, or let's do mkdir test, which will make a directory. And you can, I think the man page for that exists as well. Man mkdir. Very good. Q to quit. Okay, so we'll do cd test, and we'll do npm install express. Warning.
Command npm not found.
Did you do the last command exactly as is? With both Node.js and npm in it?
Wait,
Yeah, just copy that last command in the channel and run it again. It's okay if you already have Node.js.
Wait, so you're installing
Other way around. We are, yeah, so Ubuntu is the operating system. It's sort of like Macintosh or Windows. It's a kind of Linux. It's one particular kind of Linux. It's common for servers. We install Node.js onto that so that we can run our Express, all the kinds of servers we've been writing that have Express servers, and we run them with Node or whatever it is. I went into the test folder, so I'll add these commands. There's an entire article apparently on how to install Node.js.
My dev machine is a piece of software called npm, which is the version manager.
Yeah,
That makes it much easier to download the specific version.
but how do you install NVM?
You need a bash script.
Oh, nice.
Just curl straight to bash.
Yeah. Well, so anyway, this is a server up on Amazon's cloud. Everyone's getting it for free, so you can just delete it when you're done or whatever. This is not going to be Dockerized. This is not, necessarily a modern best practice way to start a server. We're just sort of demonstrating that you can start a server right away. We'll probably show a way to put a Docker on here, but then we'll also show some much easier things to configure, like Beanstalk and or I don't know. What do you think? We should talk about what exactly to talk about, but one of them should be serverless, and you're going to do that. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Sure. Yeah. I'll put all the commands into a file from the Slack channel too. So yeah. Okay. So that we're going to go into this test file, test folder that we just made here. And then we say, there's 2 different commands for editing files right in a terminal. I'm not going to do VI because that's Vim. And Vim is scary, and it's for people who are extremely good at, or wizards of stuff like Ryan Gauss, and maybe you do Vim. I can survive in Vim. I know how to save, I know how to quit, I know how to undo, and I know how to navigate up and down, which is, survival. Yeah.
The only reason I ever learned VI was because it was just always installed by default.
Yeah. It's really common, but Ubuntu also has an easier editor called Nano. So we can say nano index.js. And this is a text editor. This is sort of like VS Code or another text editor, but it's like all built into the terminal. And these little carrots at the bottom here, this is the control key. So it's like Control O, Control W, Control X. And we can just copy the express hello world example right into here. And we're going over time, so we got to do it quick. Hello world. Okay. So here is this. And we're going to be sending back hello world to anybody who connects. And that's it, the app.listen. I pasted this in right into here. You should see it like this. And then I'm going to do Control X. It'll say save modified buffer. And I want to say yes. File name to write, index.js, hit enter. And now we have a new file called index.js. Now this is a little tricky. It's not just shell commands. So if you want extra help with this part, please set up a little time on my calendar. So I won't even, there's more than just terminal commands because you're interacting with that editor. Right? But if we ls, we'll see index.js. And if we run node index.js, we're now running an app on our web server. Now we can't connect to this yet, quite yet, because our web server only has port number 22 exposed to the internet. That's how we can SSH to it. It has no other ports connected to the internet. Now, if we want to be able to just look at this really easily, we need to open that port. So I'm going to go to the, where is my AWS instances? Okay. So here's the instance, and if you look in this information, there is a security groups, and that's the security group I named CICD project server here. If we click on this, and then sort of, yeah, this is what I was talking about with the sort of have to pull this up, and then go to inbound. See, here's our SSH port. It's number 22. We're going to edit this and we're going to add a rule. And we're going to see that this is 3000. And the source is anything. So anything means 0.0.0.0.0/0 means all IP addresses in the whole world. And I'll give it a description, connect to Express Dev Server. And then save it. So you should see 2 rules in this thing if you successfully add, and this one should say port 3000. This is everything. And pretty immediately, we should be able to go to the IP address that we originally connected to. So, sorry, I think I have to go back to the instances. So I'm going to go services, EC2. I should have like written it down or something. But I go to one running instance. This is the running one. And you can copy either one of these. So this or the IP address below it should both work the same way. And if you go to your web browser, or just go to a new tab. So I'm going to copy this and go to a new tab, paste that, and do :3000. There's our hello world page. So this is being served from one of Amazon's servers. And what I can do here is, in fact, I'm going to do Control-C right now. But right now, I'm going to leave this running overnight. And I'll show you, we can just walk away, it'll stay running. So I'll do node index.js ampersand. That'll work, right? So this ampersand at the end tells it run it in the background. So through the terminal session. Oh, okay. How do we really quickly get it running like in systemd or something? Maybe we'll have to run it overnight starting tomorrow. No.
Not screen on your computer, I mean screen on the remote server.
Oh, okay. I do. Oh, how do you exit screen? Control A, control. Oh, screen is a dangerous program. What did I just do? Oh,
You're
boy.
out of your terminal.
Yeah. Did I just lose it? Oh no, I just lost it.
Sorry.
All right, well, screen is a very dangerous, difficult program.
More used to 2 months by thanks screen.
So now I'm gonna paste the full command to SSH from anywhere because I was not in the right folder here. So I have to do SSH-I and then the full path to this key, which is /CIC, whoops, /.ssh CIC, and then the rest of it. And this will run from anywhere on my, no matter where you open a terminal from and where your CD to or anything like that. This is enough information for it to know it's your home folder and always find the file. So your real command will look something more like this. Okay, anyway, we'll have to set this up to run permanently and a little later, but that's a server running on the internet. And you can do the same thing. We'll do some version of this. You could run your capstone server like this. Yeah, which will keep restarting. Now, there are other ways to do this kind of thing that are a little simpler. So some of this is for instruction purposes. And you may want to use an alternative type of thing that we're going to get into next or later this week. So, don't necessarily set everything up right now. Yeah. Cool, thank you. Yes, Anna.
So does the domain go to server, like browser or something? You mentioned this in one of the database.
Yeah.
Using Docker like that. It's like the server in the database and it was like a software like Google and then there's
So the database, you could do exactly the same kind of thing, but instead of saying apt install node on here, you could say install Postgres or install MySQL. You could install your database on a server just like this. You could put it on the same server as your app. You could put it on a different server that's just your database and have two, one and one. I think what we're going to look at is just a database that you can set up right away, but you don't have to install Postgres or anything. And to get backups, you can have backups configured. So all you have to do is connect to it. So you'll just start it from the Amazon console and then connect to it from your web server. And all you need is one web server and one database instance.
Yeah, but I was just wondering, like, I mean, if the domain like creates that, like, sort of like mediator between the server and the application itself, like the users.
So the server in that case is the database or is in front of the database? So I think we should review the kind of like architecture that when a client connects to the server, then the server connects to the database. So the server is basically preparing data, fetching data, and writing data to the database on behalf of, or the user wants to do something, the server does that in the So we are skipping these two right now. We just started a server, so just one server, and we allowed it to connect directly from the internet.
Okay.
So we don't have either of these two in the middle right now. No, because we're not, it's partly because it's fairly complicated to set all that up. And we might actually just do a solution where it's much simpler. But it includes all this, but it's not, if you have to manually set up a load balancer, you can do it. Amazon will let you a load balancer, they'll let you a firewall, and start using firewall security. They'll do sort of a thing that does all of that all together. So for your application. And there's many versions, competing for the version of that. All of it.
It's just like.
Start is largely so that you can handle a very large amount of requests, and you can have servers which the server doesn't have to be on a fast enough computer that just keeps getting faster and faster. You can have 10 servers, many servers, and then add weekend servers. So a load balancer, all it does is it lets you send requests to more than one server. That's why there's stack, because it's one of several.
It's the opposite of strong.
And typically, have only
I'm sorry,
one
you
data.
I'm sorry, sorry.
You have to have it super huge for some reason, where it's very difficult. You need many databases, but usually it's one database, many applications, one load balancer, firewall, and to one of the servers.
But it's kind of like fire packet.
Yeah, so yeah, you sort of have to chain through, in a way, but each one kind of has its own purpose and it controls what you can do with it. You can't just send any data equalize as you want. You have to do something to one endpoints, load,
Good night.
So the application controls access often. It makes it a lot simpler to work with than having to query your database manually. It performs extra computations on the data that it loads or connects to other services. So sometimes the server might send you or it might kick off a long running process or something like that. It's not in the data, so you can connect to other things.
How do I get this?
To just fix it. Now you're logged in. So you should be able to log in at any time. Now you can stop the instance if you don't want it to be running and using your credits, but I feel like it's barely significant. Like if you want to save your credits as long as possible, you could stop the instance, but it won't matter for one day. So I can show you how to do that.
So Google has a domain.
No, this nothing here will stop it. You have to go to the console and you have to find the instance, or control click it, and then go to instance state, and then go to stop. But don't do terminate because that'll delete it
And stay and stop.
and then stop. Yeah.
Also, it will change that IP address you use.
Oh,
Which
fun.
means that we would have to go back and copy.
You have to copy it again. Yeah.
It's just like.
All right.
if you
All right.
go
Good
back and
night.
run the same command against the IP.
Oh, decisions, I think I'll leave it mine.